Now, I know what you might be thinking. Another book about investing. Another complicated strategy that requires spreadsheets and finance degrees. Well, here's the beautiful thing about this book. It's the exact opposite. J.L. Collins wrote this originally as a series of letters to his daughter, explaining everything she needed to know about money in the simplest terms possible. No jargon, no complexity. Just straight talk about how to build wealth and achieve financial independence. And that's exactly what we're going to explore together over the next hour. We'll walk through Collins' philosophy on money, his incredibly simple investment strategy, and why he believes that financial freedom is within reach for almost anyone willing to follow a few key principles. So, settle in, and let's discover the simple path to wealth. Why we need to talk about money. Collins starts with something important. Money is a tool. That's it. It's not good or evil, it's not the meaning of life, and it's not something to obsess over. But it is something that can buy you the most precious commodity of all, your freedom. Think about it this way. Right now, most of us trade our time for money. We go to work, spend 8 or 10 hours doing something we may or may not love, and get paid for it. But what if you could flip that equation? What if your money could work for you, so you didn't have to work for it? That's what Collins calls financial independence, and it's the whole point of this journey. Financial independence doesn't necessarily mean retiring at 30 and lying on a beach forever. It means having enough wealth that you have choices. You can work because you want to, not because you have to. You can take that lower-paying job you're passionate about. You can travel for 6 months. You can spend more time with your kids. That's freedom, and money is simply the tool that unlocks it. But before we can build wealth, Collins says we need to deal with the thing that's holding most people back: debt. He's blunt about this. Debt is an emergency. It's a crisis. It's a monster that eats your financial future bite by bite. And the most dangerous debt of all? Consumer debt. Credit cards, car loans for fancy vehicles, those buy now, pay later schemes that make it so easy to spend money you don't have. Here's why debt is so destructive. Let's say you have a credit card charging you 18% interest. When you carry a balance, you're essentially paying the credit card company 18% every year for the privilege of having bought stuff in the past. Meanwhile, Collins is going to show us how to earn about 10% per year through investing. See the problem? You can't get ahead if you're paying 18% on one side while earning 10% on the other. Collins' advice is simple and uncompromising. Get out of debt as fast as you possibly can. Not tomorrow, not next year, now. Make it your top priority. Cut expenses to the bone if you have to. Sell stuff, work extra hours, do whatever it takes. Because until you're free from debt, you're not on the path to wealth at all. You're on the treadmill to nowhere. The only exception he makes is a reasonable mortgage on a home you can actually afford. And we'll talk about what reasonable means in a moment. Once you're free from debt, Collins warns us about another trap: lifestyle inflation. Here's how it works. You get your first job making, say, $40,000 a year. You live in a small apartment, drive an old car, and get by just fine. Then you get a raise. Now you're making $50,000. Great. Except suddenly that old car seems embarrassing. You upgrade. Then your apartment feels cramped, so you move somewhere nicer with higher rent. Then you start eating out more because, hey, you can afford it now. Before you know it, you're making $70,000 a year and somehow feeling just as broke as when you made $40,000. That's lifestyle inflation, and it's deadly to wealth building. Collins' approach is different. He suggests living below your means even as your income grows, especially as your income grows. Because the gap between what you earn and what you spend, that's your wealth-building machine. The bigger that gap, the faster you reach financial independence. He's not saying you should live like a monk forever, but he is saying that spending money doesn't actually make you happy for very long. That new car gives you a thrill for maybe a week, then it's just your car. Meanwhile, having money in the bank, knowing you're building your freedom, gives you a sense of peace and security that lasts and lasts. All right, now we get to the heart of the book, Collins' investment strategy. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's almost ridiculously simple. His recommendation is this: put your money in a single total stock market index fund and leave it there. That's it. That's the strategy. Now, if you're thinking this sounds too simple to work, you're not alone. But Collins backs this up with decades of evidence and personal experience. Let me explain why this works so well. First, what's an index fund? Instead of trying to pick individual winning stocks, an index fund simply buys a tiny piece of every company in the market. When you invest in a total stock market index fund, you're buying a slice of the entire American economy. Every company, every sector, everything. As the American economy grows over time, your investment grows with it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You might think that professional investors with their fancy computers and Harvard degrees could beat this simple approach, and you'd be wrong. Study after study shows that over the long term, somewhere between 80 and 90% of professional money managers failed to beat the simple index fund approach. They charge high fees, they make trades trying to time the market, and in the end, they underperform. Why? Collins explains it comes down to three things: fees, behavior, and the impossibility of consistently predicting the future. Let's talk about fees first. Actively managed funds, where someone is constantly buying and selling stocks trying to beat the market, charge high fees for this service, often 1% or more per year. That might sound like much, but over decades, those fees compound and eat away massive amounts of your wealth. Index funds, on the other hand, charge minimal fees. VTSAX charges just 0.04%. That difference is enormous over time. Second, behavior. When professional managers try to time the market, buying and selling based on their predictions, they inevitably buy high and sell low sometimes. It's human nature. The index fund approach removes this temptation entirely. You just hold everything all the time. Third, predicting the future is impossible. Nobody knows which companies will thrive and which will fail. Nobody knows when the market will rise or fall. The financial media loves to feature pundits making predictions, and occasionally someone gets lucky and is right. But nobody is consistently right. The index approach says, I don't need to predict anything. I'll just own everything and let the overall economy's growth carry me forward. Collins wants us to understand something profound about the stock market. Over the long term, it goes up. Yes, there are crashes. Yes, there are scary downturns. We'll talk about those in a minute. But if you look at the history of the American stock market over decades, it has consistently grown at an average of about 10% per year. Some years more, some years less, but that's the long-term average. Why? Because the stock market represents the collective productivity and innovation of human beings. Companies are constantly working to create value, to make products people want, to solve problems. Over time, this creates real wealth, and stock prices reflect that wealth creation. When you invest in an index fund, you're essentially betting on human ingenuity and progress. And historically, that's been an excellent bet. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world, and Collins dedicates significant time to helping us understand why. Here's the magic. When you invest money, it earns returns, and then those returns earn their own returns, and then those returns on returns earn returns. This snowball effect is compound growth, and over long periods, it's absolutely stunning. Let me give you an example. Let's say you invest $10,000 today in an index fund earning 10% per year on average. In 10 years, you'd have about $26,000. Not bad, right? But here's where it gets exciting. In 20 years, you'd have about $67,000. In 30 years, you'd have over $174,000. And in 40 years, over $450,000 from that single $10,000 investment. That's compounding. The growth isn't linear, it's exponential. The early years feel slow, but then the curve starts bending upward faster and faster. Collins is a huge advocate for making investing automatic. Here's his approach. Every month, like clockwork, invest a portion of your income into your index fund. Ideally, this happens automatically before you even see the money. Why is this so powerful? First, it removes the temptation to spend that money. Second, it removes any decision fatigue or emotional interference. You don't have to think about whether now is a good time to invest or wonder if you should wait. It just happens. This automatic investing also takes advantage of something called dollar cost averaging. When you invest the same amount every month, sometimes you're buying when prices are high, sometimes when they're low. Over time, this averages out and actually works in your favor. When prices drop, you're...
Here's an uncomfortable truth that Collins doesn't shy away from. The financial services industry makes billions of dollars from complexity and confusion. They benefit when you think investing is hard and that you need their expensive help. Financial advisors, actively managed mutual funds, complicated investment products, frequent trading, all of these things generate fees for the industry while generally underperforming the simple index approach. Collins isn't saying everyone in the financial industry is bad, but he is saying that their interests often aren't aligned with yours. They make money from activity and complexity. You make money from simplicity and patience. So they'll try to sell you on the hot new stock, the actively managed fund that's been beating the market lately, the complicated tax strategy, the alternative investments, and almost always you're better off ignoring all of it and sticking with your simple index fund. Collins walks us through the most common investing mistakes he sees people make. First, trying to time the market. Waiting for a crash to invest or selling before a predicted downturn almost never works. You end up missing the gains and often buying or selling at exactly the wrong time. Second, chasing performance. Last year's hot fund or stock rarely stays hot. People buy after something is already run up, then get disappointed when it reverts to the mean. Third, panic selling during downturns. We've talked about this, but it's worth repeating because it's so common and so destructive. Fourth, paying high fees without realizing it. Many people don't even know what they're paying in investment fees, but over decades, these fees can consume hundreds of thousands of dollars of wealth. Fifth, making investing too complicated. Having accounts scattered across multiple institutions, owning dozens of different funds, constantly tinkering with the portfolio, all of this creates stress and usually reduces returns. Collins' antidote to all these mistakes? Keep it simple. One fund, automatic investing, never sell. Ignore the noise. That's it. The Journey to Financial Independence. Throughout the book, Collins shares pieces of his own journey, and it's both inspiring and relatable. He didn't start out wealthy. He didn't inherit money or get lucky with some startup stock options. He simply worked, lived below his means, and invested consistently in index funds for decades. There were setbacks. There were market crashes that probably felt scary at the time. There were temptations to spend more or try to get fancy with his investments. But he stuck to the simple path, and it worked. He reached financial independence in his 40s, which gave him the freedom to work on his own terms. Eventually, he started writing about money, which turned into a blog, which turned into this book. What strikes me about his story is the ordinariness of it. He's not a hedge fund manager or a real estate mogul. He's just someone who understood some basic principles and had the discipline to follow them. And that's the point. This path is available to almost anyone. The book originated as a series of letters to Collins' daughter, offering her financial guidance as she entered adulthood. That origin shows in the book's tone: warm, honest, protective, and deeply caring. He writes as a father who wants to equip his child with the knowledge to avoid financial struggles and build a secure future. He's not trying to make her rich for the sake of being rich. He's trying to give her freedom and options.
This framing is important because it cuts through all the noise and complexity around money. A father isn't going to give his daughter bad advice. He's not going to make it unnecessarily complicated. He's going to give her the truth as clearly as he can. And that truth is what we've been exploring. Spend less than you earn, avoid debt, invest in a simple index fund, hold through the storms, and you'll build wealth and freedom over time. What about a house? Collins addresses one of the most common questions: should you buy a house? His answer is nuanced. A house is not an investment in the traditional sense. It doesn't produce income, it costs money to maintain, and you can't easily sell pieces of it. So don't think of your house as your path to wealth. However, if you want to own a home for lifestyle reasons, that's perfectly fine. Just do it wisely. Buy a house you can truly afford. Don't stretch to buy the biggest house the bank will lend you money for. Keep your housing costs reasonable so you can still invest for your future. And for many people, especially in high-cost areas or if you value flexibility, renting might actually make more financial sense. There's no shame in renting a house. Don't let society pressure you into buying a house if it doesn't make sense for your situation. The key is to avoid letting housing costs consume so much of your income that you can't invest for financial independence. While Collins writes primarily from an American perspective and focuses on the U.S. stock market through VTSAX, he acknowledges that people in other countries can apply the same principles. Look for a low-cost, broad market index fund in your country. In many places, there are equivalents to Vanguard's funds that offer similar low-cost exposure to the stock market. The specific fund doesn't matter as much as the principles: broad diversification, low fees, and buy-and-hold investing. He also suggests that international investors might want some exposure to the U.S. market, given its size and historical performance. Many international index funds include U.S. stocks automatically. What about retirement accounts? Collins is a huge advocate for tax-advantaged retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs in the United States. These accounts offer powerful benefits. Either you get a tax deduction now and pay taxes later in retirement, or you invest after-tax money and never pay taxes on the growth. Either way, the tax advantages compound over decades and can add significantly to your wealth. His advice? Max out these accounts if you can. If your employer offers a 401k match, contribute at least enough to get the full match. That's literally free money. Then work on maxing out the full contribution limits. Inside these accounts, you simply buy the same index fund you'd buy anyway. The account is just a tax-advantaged wrapper around your investments. One of the deeper themes in Collins' book is the concept of enough. Our consumer culture constantly pushes us to want more, buy more, upgrade more. There's always a nicer car, a bigger house, a fancier vacation. Collins challenges this mindset. He asks, what is actually enough for you to be happy? Research shows that beyond a certain level of comfort, more money and more stuff don't actually increase happiness. Once your basic needs are met and you have some security and comfort, additional consumption gives diminishing returns. But you know what does increase happiness? Freedom, autonomy, time to spend on things and people you care about, absence of financial stress. These are the things wealth can genuinely provide, but you don't need to be a multimillionaire to get them. Collins encourages us to define our own enough and resist the temptation to keep moving the goalposts. If you need $60,000 a year to live comfortably, then once you've built enough wealth to sustain that, you've won. You don't need to keep accumulating forever.
Collins warns about people who get so caught up in wealth accumulation that it becomes an end in itself. They reach financial independence but keep working and accumulating anyway, never actually claiming their freedom. He's seen people die with millions in the bank, having never really enjoyed their wealth or used it to create the life they wanted. That's a tragedy, in his view. Money is a tool for building freedom. Once you have that freedom, use it. Take the trip. Spend time with your grandkids. Pursue the project you're passionate about. Don't die with the most money. Die having lived the fullest life. This doesn't mean reckless spending. It means being intentional about what wealth is actually for, creating the life you want to live. Since the book originated as letters to his daughter, Collins naturally includes thoughts on teaching children about money. He advocates for financial education starting early, not in a heavy-handed way, but through conversations and modeling. Kids are watching how you handle money, whether you realize it or not. They're absorbing lessons about spending, saving, and values. Some principles he suggests teaching. First, the difference between wants and needs. Kids naturally want everything they see, but they can learn to distinguish between genuine needs and fleeting desires. Second, the power of saving and delayed gratification. Instead of buying something immediately, saving for it teaches patience and makes the eventual purchase more meaningful. Third, the basics of investing. Even young kids can understand that money can grow over time and that businesses create value that shareholders benefit from. Fourth, the importance of living below your means, no matter what your means are. Collins notes that these lessons are best taught through experience, not lectures. Give kids an allowance and let them make decisions. Let them save for something they want. Open a small investment account and show them how it grows. Make money something practical and understandable, not mysterious or scary. For parents with means, Collins addresses the question of how much to give your kids. He warns against making children dependent through excessive gifts or inheritances. The goal is to raise capable, independent adults, not to make their lives so easy that they never develop strength. His approach: provide for education, give them the knowledge in this book, and then let them build their own wealth. Maybe help with a house down payment or emergency, but don't rob them of the satisfaction and self-efficacy that comes from building wealth themselves. The greatest gift you can give your children isn't money. It's the knowledge and values to create their own financial security. Money as a means, not an end. Throughout this entire book, Collins keeps coming back to a central theme. Money is not the point. Freedom is the point. He's not advocating for greed or materialism. He's advocating for building enough wealth that you can focus on what actually matters to you. Family, creativity, contribution, adventure, peace, whatever your values are. The simple path to wealth is a means to an end. The end is a life well lived on your own terms. Collins himself, after achieving financial independence, didn't stop working. He blogs, he wrote this book, he engages with readers. But he does these things because he finds them meaningful, not because he needs the money. That's the difference. He's working from a position of freedom, not obligation. One of the things that strikes me most about Collins' approach is how democratic it is. You don't need special knowledge, insider access, or even a huge income. Yes, higher income helps you build wealth faster, but even someone with a modest income can follow this path. Live below your means, invest the difference in a low-cost index fund, hold through the storms, and time does the rest. This used to not be possible for regular people. Index funds are a relatively recent innovation. Before them, investing meant either picking individual stocks or paying high fees to mutual funds. But now, anyone with a few dollars and a brokerage account can invest in the entire market at minimal cost. Collins sees this as a profound democratization of wealth building. The tools that used to be available only to the wealthy are now available to everyone. Finally, Collins touches on the role of wealth in relation to society. When you invest in the stock market, you're not just enriching yourself. You're also providing capital to businesses that create jobs, develop innovations, and provide goods and services. Your investments fuel economic growth that benefits everyone. Moreover,
When you achieve financial independence, you're no longer a drain on social safety nets. You can contribute to causes you care about. You can take risks on meaningful work that might not pay well. You can volunteer your time. Financial independence creates a virtuous cycle. You help yourself, which positions you to help others. So let's bring this all together. We've spent the last hour exploring J.L. Collins' simple path to wealth, and now I want to distill it down to the essential lessons you should carry with you. Lesson 1. Debt is an emergency. Get out of it as fast as possible, and then stay out of it. Consumer debt is the single biggest obstacle to wealth building. Lesson 2. Spend less than you earn. Resist lifestyle inflation. Live below your means even as your income grows. The gap between your income and spending is your wealth-building machine. Lesson 3. Invest in a low-cost total stock market index fund. Collins recommends VTSAX, but the principle is simple. Broad diversification, minimal fees, and buy and hold investing beats almost anything else. Lesson 6. Invest automatically and consistently. Make investing effortless by automating it. Don't try to time the market. Just keep buying month after month, year after year. Lesson 5. Never sell, especially during crashes. The market will crash multiple times during your investing lifetime. This is normal. Hold through it, or even better, keep buying. Crashes are sales. Lesson 7. Know your number. Calculate how much you need to be financially independent using the 4% rule. This gives you a clear target to work toward. Lesson 8. Avoid the traps. Don't try to time the market, don't chase performance, don't pay high fees, and don't make investing complicated. Simple beats complex. Lesson 9. Define your enough. Resist the endless pursuit of more. Figure out what you actually need to be happy and secure, and once you reach it, claim your freedom. And Lesson 10. Remember that wealth is a tool for freedom. The point isn't to die with the most money. It's to live the life you want to live on your own terms, with your time belonging to you. That's it. That's the simple path to wealth. It's not complicated. It doesn't require special expertise or perfect timing. It just requires discipline, patience, and a long-term perspective. Will you get rich quick? No. Will you build substantial wealth in 10, 20, 30 years? Absolutely. Will you achieve financial independence and freedom? If you follow this path consistently, yes. J.L. Collins has given us a gift with this book: clarity in a world of financial confusion, simplicity in a world of unnecessary complexity, and a proven path that anyone can follow. The only question left is, will you take that first step? Will you start spending less than you earn today? Will you open that index fund account this week? Will you commit to the journey? Because here's the thing, reading this summary, or even reading Collins' entire book, doesn't change anything. Only action changes things. Only actually following this path builds wealth. But if you do follow it, if you commit to the simple path, you'll look back in 10 or 20 years amazed at what you've built. Not just wealth, but freedom. Not just money, but options. Not just a portfolio balance, but a life designed on your own terms. That's the promise of the simple path to wealth, and it's available to you right now. Thank you for listening, and here's to your journey toward financial independence and freedom.